and others can join as they come in. Good afternoon and thank you for joining. My name is Stephanie Lambert and I'm a partner at HFW. I'm also a committee member on the Executive Committee of the Women Lawyers Association of New South Wales. This is the second of 4 webinars that we're holding as part of the Welcome to the Law program, which is run by the Women Lawyers Association of New South Wales. Today we will be talking about things that I wish I had have known, which would have been very helpful when I first joined. We'll hear from our panellists. We've got Giles Stapleton, who's from 9 Selborne Chambers, Kendra Mackay, a partner at HWL Ellsworth, and my associate Pippa Harley from HFW. So we might kick it off with you first, Giles. So you've had a fairly unusual calling to the bar because previously you were in the property industry as a funds manager. Then you joined the bar as a mature age student. Can you let us know a little bit about how you found that experience and what advice you can give to young lawyers who might be thinking of joining the bar?
Sure. So I grew up in the UK, Steph, and went to university there, and I read law at university. And a friend of mine introduced me to the bar when I was there, and I spent some time in a law firm in London for 2 weeks, and I spent 2 weeks in a set of chambers in London. And I sort of totally and utterly became focused on the bar instead of solicitors. I think in the law firm office, I was stuck in a library and drinking cups of tea, trying to read cases, and fell asleep very fast. Whereas in the bar, I was dealing with directors' duties. So in a chambers, I was dealing with things like directors' duties and people writing false checks and what that meant. So I found the bar really interesting. I went to do the bar exams in London, and just through personal circumstances, whilst I qualified, I decided to take a different path. So that path was sort of into corporate finance and you know, basically industry as an in-house lawyer. Then I moved here to Australia in '97 and carried on basically working in commerce and got through 18 years to about 40 odd years old, and realised as a result of the GFC that the property industry was suffering and jobs were not easy to come by. I had a good job, but I was a bit worried about redundancy, and I was a bit worried about sort of ending up on the shelf, I guess, in the property sense. So the only thing I had to rely back on was my legal degree and my bar practice course in the UK. So I thought I would do the bar exams here, which I was able to do because the systems are the same. So I did a year of transition, if you call it, from, you know, constitutional law, and then the College of Law. Did that for the best part of a year in my mid-30s. And then I went from that to about 7 years later deciding to do the bar exams, passed them, and thought, well, you know, I should try and practice. And so I gave up my job in the city in the early 40s, and that was 8 years ago. So it's, you know, I've never practiced as a solicitor. I did not practice as a solicitor for one day. And that's something about which I'm reasonably proud of, because it proves that you can go to the bar without, in this country and anywhere else, you can go and be a barrister without being a solicitor. You can go and be a barrister without really much more than a basic legal training. Doesn't mean it's easy, but that's how I came to the bar, early 40s, and you know, it's worked out very well.
And just talking about different jurisdictions, Kendra, you started your career off in Melbourne and studied there, and then moved to Sydney as a young lawyer. How did you find that transition, and did you have any difficulties with the jurisdictional change?
Look, there are challenges, you know, when I'm in property also, so I'm actually a Kiwi, so I did my degree and kind of came up through New Zealand, and then moved to Australia and finished my degree off at Monash University, and then just started working straight away as a solicitor at a small firm. And then, you know, strategically, I suppose you're looking for, you know, what do you want to be doing next? What kind of work mix do you want to be doing? Where is the industry? Where is the market kind of going? And for me, it was sort of Sydney. That was at the time of GFC. So, you know, a lot of the property groups and property juniors were really sort of struggling at that point. So I took an opportunity to move to Sydney pretty quickly. I think I was up there for one day and had an interview and just took the job, and it's worked out great. I see jurisdictional requirements as they're not a bar of entry. If you want to, learn in another international jurisdiction, or you want to, change states, we certainly in our over the years, we've actually done a lot of work in Asia and things like that, but you sort of have a fundamental understanding of in an expertise area, and then you're able to apply that in different markets, because we did it about how do you do business in Australia, and so we went out to multiple jurisdictions, and you're learning, as long as you're willing to always learn and grow and develop sort of as a junior, that's what you should be focused on. It shouldn't be about, I'm going to have to start again and reread the Property Relevant Act in Sydney or New South Wales or what have you. Yes, there's elements of getting up to speed on different registration requirements and different leasing provisions and things like that, which are slightly different, but largely, you should know your sort of area, and it should be quite transportable. And I think then you have a lot more to add. There's more value add, really, that you have exposure to a different market and things like that. So, yeah, no bar whatsoever from my view. And actually, I was saying to Steph just before we kind of started, I'm actually looking at, hiring a young lawyer from Adelaide, because he's looking to come up for an opportunity in Sydney. And, yeah, jump at that.
And you're the youngest one out of our group too, and you've just recently been admitted. What can you tell us about the skills that you've learnt in university versus College of Law versus how you've applied those now that you're actually practicing the law?
Yeah, so I was admitted in March this year, and I actually finished my university degree in July last year. But I have been working for HFW for over 3 years now in the construction major real estate project team. And one thing that I wish that I had known, before I kind of started working in a law firm when I was a student, is that all the legal theory that we learn at university, that's only one component of what we do each day as lawyers. So that legal theory is great because you learn all the fundamental skills like analytical thinking or analysing, critical thinking, problem solving, working under time pressure. And they really lay the foundations for the practical skills that I have learned on the job. So, I did my PLT last year, and I'd been working in a law firm for a couple of years before that. And I just kind of, I was very surprised by how much we learn on the job and all the practical skills you pick up on a day-to-day basis. And then it's, a continual learning process, and it's not all about that theory that you are so consumed with when you're at university.
That's exactly what I found, and actually quite a lot of the skills that I used when I first started out practicing law, I actually gained from the College of Law through the PLT program.
Yes.
Because they will start teaching you sort of more of those skills that you would use on a practical level and day-to-day sort of basis.
Exactly.
Giles, just speaking about things that you experience on a daily basis, for those who might aspire to the lofty heights of the bar, what can you tell us about your daily experiences, and particularly things that people might not necessarily know?
Okay. There are so many parts of the bar that it's sort of almost it's just an open-ended type of conversation, but it is a very challenging place at a personal level. I mean that in a positive way. You have to be extremely driven, in my view, or from my experience, you have to be extremely driven, because when you wake up in the morning on the first day, or even today for me, 8 to 9 years later, there's nothing external that's going to motivate you to do the work, or to find some work, or really just to carry on, because there's nobody, like there might be in a firm, saying, well, there's nobody I'm accountable to, really. I'm accountable to myself. I'm accountable to my day-to-day expenses and my dependents. And so you just have to be resilient. And every day you have to wake up and say, well, I've got to do this. And now, that's not to say it's difficult to want to do it. It's actually incredibly interesting, but that's the first thing, is the level of self-motivation you need. If you're the type of person, I think, that depends on a structure where, you know, there's a partner and then some associates or senior associates, and then you grow up in that environment, you become used to that environment and you thrive on it and love it. Well, the bar may not work terribly well, because another thing I found when I first came here was, you know, there are lots and lots of corridors around Selborne and Wentworth chambers, and then there's the annexes to the chambers. And I, being a sort of a fairly social person from the property industry, where, you know, it was actually a struggle to do any work, because the majority of the time people are chatting or going out for coffee or going, you know, to the pub, basically, to do their business, or getting on a plane and trying to get yourself upgraded to business class to Melbourne, all the sorts of tricks and fun that come with being a corporate employee. At the bar, you walk among the corridors and all the doors are shut. You know, the people have got their names on, and the door might be slightly ajar, or the door might be shut. And if it opens, the person that walks past you will sort of look at you as if to say, you know, hello, but not much more than that. Or if you're lucky, hello. And I found that very alarming and very, very strange. But I have to admit that I've become a little bit like that myself. The bar is a sort of a place where, because of just the intensity of the work and the need to concentrate, that you actually shut your own door after a while. You know, you close it and you think, oh my God, I've become one of them. One of those people that shuts the door and doesn't talk to anyone and is there all day. So I think you've got to be able to spend time on your own. You've got to be very self-motivated. You've got to be reasonably resilient and thick-skinned, because you've got your day-to-day experience in court and judges. You've got colleagues who are not necessarily always your best friend. You've got clients that, you know, can be happy one day and dissatisfied the next. So I think for me, I didn't realize how self-driven and how thick-skinned you'd have to be. But for all of that, it is still a very rewarding and very enjoyable career. Hope that helps.
Talking about the self-driven mentality that you need to have, and that you're working for yourself. At a law firm, you've got partners to feed you work, but as a barrister, you're the one who has to go out and source it yourself. Not having that experience in the background because you didn't practice law, how did you find actually going out to get the work, and what were your sources of work that you found to be, you know, the best sources for you?
Well, it's probably the ultimate question, and it's the one where, you know, when I came to the bar at early 40s, I was married, I had a mortgage, I had children in private school. I have to confess to sitting on my lounge at home about a year after coming to the bar and apologising to my wife for the vanity and the stupidity of making the decision, because I sort of put my whole family under pressure. I put myself under the most pressure, but it took at least 12 months to get really even. I don't know, I suppose in my first 6 months I earned about $20,000, and that was less than 10% of what I'd earned in the previous 5 years. So that was really humbling. So that's then a segue into the fact that when you arrive in chambers, you're pretty much a non-entity or a not known entity to most people. Someone would have interviewed you, you'd have been given a readership, you'll have all your friends from the bar course, but they would have all dispersed, and there'd be, you know, between 70 or 80 of them among the now 2,000 barristers in Sydney. So you don't really have a lot to do with them. So you're very much on your own. And the only way I knew how to do it, and I was on 13 Wentworth chambers to begin with, was I literally, for the first few weeks, I knocked on every barrister's door, kind of walked in, invited or not, but trying to be as, you know, polite as possible, and effectively put myself out there for work and said, you know, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. And I just used to have to do that every week. And it's humbling. It's not easy, and it's also not a short-term thing. It's not something where 5 people's doors that you knock on, you end up with 5 briefs. It's far from it. I mean, one very kind person on 13 referred me to a solicitor in Coffs Harbour. That person asked me to do a deed of release for something that was being, shall we say, settled. Now, as I said, I'd never been a solicitor, so I was like, oh my God, where do I start? You know, because I don't even have my own precedent. So I had to go to the bar library, get a precedent, then I had to speak to the client. And from the moment I was speaking to the client, or the solicitor, I should say, I was selling myself. And that's what you have to do. You know, every word was geared towards making this person like me, want to use me, trust me. And quite frankly, that's basically that's what I have to do every day now. And you know, this pandemic we've all been dealing with has refreshed that need, I think, for many people, because we all have to make sure that we're all servicing and serving people as much as possible. We're just a service industry, you know, we're really just selling ourselves. And so you just have to remain that way all the time. And Steph, you know, some people are better at that than others. Personally experienced last year, so.
Well, so Kevin Giles was talking before about his expectations about what he thought would happen when he first joined the bar. Can you tell us about what your expectations were before becoming a partner versus actually being a partner? And, and would you still have submitted that application had you known the things you know now?
Well, I mean, I had an interesting partnership journey, I suppose, because it wasn't such that I submitted an application in the traditional sense in private practice. I was headhunted, so I was a lateral hire for the largest national firm in Australia. I moved across and took a partnership role, having not been a partner before. So not only was I moving firms, moving my client base, getting to know everyone, starting again from scratch, I was also, you know, a newly appointed partner, whatever that means. So for me, not much practically changed. So from the day-to-day sort of level that Giles was talking about, you know, you're still, like Giles, you're running your own legal practice. You're running your own. It's not about you've got your own client base. You've got your own. You know, you really need to focus on your business in itself. It's not just about doing the technical work anymore. You're not just servicing other partners' clients. These are your clients. This is your business. You need to really focus on how you run a cost-effective legal business, because you're just one of a number of partners that come together to make the greater business. So you need to understand how the greater business works and what those drivers are economically and things like that, and then you need to apply that really to your set of circumstances and your clients to get the most sort of success. You're also then all of a sudden the leader of a team where you're directly responsible for all their thoughts and feelings and their workload and their, you know, their career development. So fortunately, I was able to sort of beg, borrow and steal my team to this point. And, you know, and so you've got to be really sort of flexible and agile in terms of, you know, how you're dealing with all these different personalities that all come to you. You know, you're no longer the person that's sort of knocking on the door like, excuse me, can I, you know, can I just borrow, you know, you're now the person that's got the queue outside the door that everyone's coming in to, you know, check this, sign off this, whatever, you know, ask a question. You're responsible for their career. And so I firmly believe that, and how I've approached it as a female lawyer, right? You want to bring the others up. You want to be treated in the way that, you know, that you fortunately might have been treated as a junior lawyer coming up through the ranks. And I was very fortunate to work for a strong female partner for the bulk of my sort of junior career. And I want to be the same in that regard to, you know, to the team. It's sort of no longer this siloed, I suppose, approach. It's you've really got to be, to grow your business, you've really got to have an internal relationship with your immediate partners in your group, and also the wider group and wider expertise, because you want to, the more you grow your profile with them and the more you grow your profile with your team, ultimately the more work you're more likely to get and more work you're going to be able to feed down, and you know, the more successful, profitable your business will be. So yeah, just on my expectations, it was also a bit different for me too, because I was actually pregnant when I was hired, when I came across. So I'm trying to grow all this and do all this, and also I'm like, see ya, I'm got mat leave. So, fortunately, again, it's about building those relationships. You build them with people you trust, a team that supports you, and that you can, you just keep, you really keep engaged as much as you can. And trying to think of what else I also had to say on what it's like to be part of, well, more reports to read. Reporting. Lots and lots of reports. to late hours. There's a lot of reports because it's, there's the business drivers that I sort of talked about that you need to be across, you need to know where everything's at. There's political power struggles that are at every firm. So you can either really decide you want to, get in with that, or you can just kind of run your own race and focus on your business and focus on your sort of, strategic growth. And, in some ways, it's important to align yourself to, a person like you, a successful kind of, relationship-driven partner. You can be often, you don't need to be these days the best technical expert, around, you've got to have a multifaceted approach to law. So I would really encourage, everyone to work on, what I wish I had known early on. It's not just about, you've done the best lease review. It's, have you maintained and established a trust relationship with your client? Have you aligned yourself with their business needs? Do you understand their risk profile? That kind of stuff.
I think that's correct, because what I found as well is that you go through your career and you get experience and skills in one area, then you move on to the next. So as a young lawyer, you learn all the technical skills at university, you start to learn the practical skills as you get up into, a bit more experience. As a more senior associate, the firm will expect you to start doing more business development, marketing, profile raising. And then once you become a partner, it's expected that yes, you have technical skills, yes, you also have business development skills, and then you need to have the skills as well to basically manage and support your team and to be able to mentor them through the program as well.
And like us women, we're uniquely, I think we have many balls in the air on a day-to-day basis anyway. So I think as well as having sort of the drive and all of that, but you've also you've got the empathy, you've got the, traditionally, successfully in law, men had a wife at home. We're still the wife. I'm still picking up wet towels every morning. And you're still here and you're still doing the hours and you're still having to be on, to deliver. It's a balancing act.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them through the Q&A or the chat function, and we'll answer those as we go along. Pippa, as a young lawyer, there's a lot of discussion, or even as a graduate going through university, there's a lot of discussion about what area of law you want to go into. But I find that there's less discussion about whether that's associated with being a transactional lawyer or a lawyer who is more of a litigation lawyer. And the two of them are really quite different things. Maybe you've had experience in both of those areas, and maybe you can speak to the audience and let us know about how you found that experience and any advice you can provide to young lawyers.
This is really interesting. This is something that myself and my friends who are also in graduate roles or, junior lawyer positions often speak about is the difference between the type of work we do, because I'm in the transactional space, whereas I've got a lot of friends in litigation. And when I first came to HFW, I was actually working for the insurance team, and we were involved in a massive class action to a psychiatric injury. And that was in the Supreme Court, and it was really, really interesting. It was a great experience. A bit like conduction by fire, because there was just so much going on and, just drowning in documents every single day because of the massive evidence that are involved. But yeah, that was a great experience. And once that wrapped up, I kind of got asked to confirm to do some work for the property and the real estate team. And I initially thought that I just would not enjoy that. And I remember thinking, oh God, this is going to be a bit of an ordeal, because my experience with property at that stage was what I had learned at uni, and I didn't particularly, real property wasn't my favourite subject. Anyway, I learned pretty early on that I prefer transactional work, and I really enjoy working in the real property area. And I think that's something that is really important to keep in mind when you're a student, because I think that, you know, a lot of students, well, I definitely did equate being a lawyer with court work, and that might not be your strength, and that's okay. I think that it's really important to kind of, you know, as a young lawyer, kind of be putting your hand up within the firm to have experience with different teams and you know, be that person that's knocking on the door, as Kendra mentioned, and, you know, not let yourself kind of get maybe pigeonholed in an area of law that you don't particularly like. And, you know, if you're being supervised by one particular partner, have the discussion with them if it's okay for you to, you know, take on work with another team, so you can kind of figure out what you love and also what you hate. But yeah, it's really good to just increase your experience with different teams, to build strong work relationships. You know, mentoring has been so important to me. I've had some fantastic mentors already in my short career, and yeah, that's really important.
We've got a question in, did you find building mentor relationships helpful going into your careers and building them? And if so, did you create and maintain these relationships? I might get Kendra to answer this one, and then maybe Pip, you can also put your feedback in.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had some fairly significant mentors in my career, luckily. Not in a, you know, Tony Robbins sense mentor where you go along and you get this kind of career counselling kind of formal setting. It's more just organically through the relationships that you're building. So the first one was the managing partner of the law firm that I first worked at. He was like head of the legal aid commission. He really sort of took me under his wing, and this was the Melbourne days, and you know, really kind of looked after my development from an early on drafting sense and things like that. And then on the move to Sydney, it was probably more naturally you might gravitate, whether it's in your team or you might find a role model or someone that you kind of look up to or aspire to be like. And it was just that. I kind of worked on a day-to-day basis with this person, and they really helped, you know, grow my skill set from, you know, commercially as well as legally, and sort of it's just a number of hours sitting together, you know, you're doing document reviews or you're doing drafting or something like that. So it was very important to me to, you know, maintain that relationship. We've still got a great relationship, and that was naturally. I didn't sort of seek out mentoring services, which maybe I could have done, but at the time.
I like the word organic because I feel like that's been my experience with mentoring relationships too. The first really significant mentor that I had was the real estate partner at HFW, and he was just fantastic. Absolutely took me on as a blank canvas and took me under his wing, and, you know, was really focused on growing my skill set, and not only you know, the legal and commercial skill set, but also my ability to, you know, interact with other lawyers, be part of the team, collaborate, you know, kind of grow my confidence a bit, which was really important. And, you know, he's moved on from HFW now, but we still maintain, you know, very close contact. We're great friends. You know, yeah, it's fantastic to continue on with that. And now obviously Steph is a big mentor of mine. And that's great. We work quite closely on a lot of matters. It's just a constant kind of interactive and collaborative, and, you know, it's a great kind of relationship to have where you have someone that's really looking out for your career development. And I think the second part of the question was about, you know, how we grow those relationships. Well, it happens inside the workplace, definitely, but it also happens, you know, with things like this that are kind of like the extracurriculars, and taking the time to get coffees together or a lunch or that kind of thing.
And it's more, I think, just touching on what you said, it's more than just the legal and commercial and the sort of career focus. Yeah. It's also the confidence is a massive thing, because as a junior lawyer and as a female junior lawyer, I mean, you can be, you know, riddled with anxiety about something. You've got imposter syndrome. It never goes, I can tell you that. I mean, you know, the mentor that I worked largely with was, told me all the time, stop apologising, don't be an apologiser. You'd sorry, can I just, sorry, sorry, I've made that mistake. It's just like, no apologies. Do you think the blokes apologise? No. Exactly. So it's sort of, in that sense, obviously don't be narcissistic and, arrogant and think that you know everything, but also, she taught me one thing, which was, fig jam. I'll never forget it.
Fig jam. It's not.
I won't go there.
So Candace picked fig jam and apologising. Giles, who are you apologising to? Who's your mentor?
I just apologise to everybody every day because I don't know much. I'm just making you up on the run the entire time. I think the imposter syndrome, just to, if it's of any interest at all, does not seem to discriminate between genders. I think it's something that, and I know you're only joking. I know you're joking, but, and it is a live issue for many people, and it's a live issue at the bar. There are many people, men and women, who I talk to, who we all think most of the time, what on earth are we doing? And every time, if I have a day or two where I don't have as much volume of work as I did for the last 6 months, which happens, and it's inexplicable, you think that's the end, and you think they've found you out, and at last, the fraud is going to come to an end. So, you can just be clean again. But then, you get another brief and you think, oh my God, I've got to go back. And in my case, even at 50 years old, I have a library and I go back to a textbook on the law of trusts, or I go back to a book that even many of the people online would have read at university, like a commentary and cases on the law of trusts, or you look at Landlaw, Peter Butt's Landlaw, because in all of our day-to-day jobs, if I might do a case that involves an extension of a caveat, for example, or trying to lapse someone's caveat and then have to defend an application. And, you just don't remember what you might have thought that you were very well read about 6 months ago. So that's the thing on the imposter syndrome. I have it every day. And then you have great days and you think, oh, fantastic. You go home and you tell your family you were brilliant that day. And that's just because every now and then it goes really well. But then at the same time, the next day you wake up and it can just go horribly wrong. And it did for me last Monday. You've got no idea why, and it just does. But then the next day you wake up in a different mood, a different set of people, different set of facts, and it can be fantastic. So that's that. In terms of mentors at the bar, I agree with everything that Pippa and Kendra have said. At the bar, it is possible to look out for mentors. It is possible to have them. It's a little less formal. You can kind of find people that you like. And in my case, if you have a coffee, for example, in the same place every day over a period of time, you get to meet the same people, going to the same places. And so you can just sit down, and because we're all self-employed, you can sort of easily get into conversations. And even now, 8 years later from the beginning, I have a mentor who's a senior counsel, who, as a result of our friendship, just talking about coffees, has, got me into a couple of cases. And those sorts of things don't happen if you're in your room. So you do have to get out, you do have to be sociable, you do have to sort of walk the street a little bit. And there are people out there that are willing to help. And I think my experience at the bar as well, and I've mentioned this to Stephanie, is your colleagues are the more important people. They're far more important to you than your client. And clients, of course, are the reason we exist, but your colleagues are the thing that make everything else seem okay in the end. And that's because you can either be helped one day because by being nice to someone that you were nice to a year ago in a case, they respect you, and so you're going to get the same treatment back. And or you can just find that basically a colleague is in desperate need of help in their own personal situation. Like I have a solicitor friend of mine who has basically bought a Mercedes from a showroom in Sydney. The light was on the wrong side of the car, so she couldn't see that one side of it had effectively faded, and got the car back to Adelaide, where she's from, realised that she'd paid far too much money for a car that was effectively defective, and was complaining about it, and rang me because she knew me from a particular jurisdiction. And for no charge, and just for the sake of a bit of, I suppose, curiosity, I wrote the statement of claim for her, told her how to deal with each directions hearing. And she's thrilled because what she's got is she's taken on a law firm which was acting for Mercedes-Benz. She's vindicated her rights under the consumer law, the Australian consumer law, got the car fixed. She didn't get a new one, but she got it all fixed at their expense. And she's now, you know, my best friend. She thinks that that's fantastic. And I'm going to get a brief or two out of that, and great word of mouth. So my view, my policy at the bar is, if you have a colleague, doesn't matter whether they're a solicitor or a barrister, and they've got a legal dispute that they personally are in, then I just do my best to either give them free advice or act for free and offer to just be there for free, because at the end of the day, they are your, you know, your best source of work as well. And I've got several clients, or several law firm clients, that brief me a lot, that have just come from being nice to other colleagues. So I think they're probably your best support and your best source of future work as well.
So Giles, that sounds like a definite high to add to your CV. But what about you've also had another high, which is participating in the Royal Banking Commission.
Yes.
You could speak to us about that experience?
Yes, well, there's a sort of a bit of a snob value at the bar, where if you get involved in ICAC or you get involved in Royal Commissions, there's a sort of a little bit of a gravy train, because obviously you can be in these things for months and months and get paid by high profile clients. So your name ends up in the paper, or you just feel fantastic because you're one of the people that got chosen. So I got, a couple of years ago, whenever it was on, I got selected to, well, I got asked actually to appear for one of the quite sort of central figures in the Royal Commission. He was a hotelier in Tasmania, and he had something like $100 to $150 million portfolio of hotels all around Tasmania and South Australia. And Bank West were his banker, and he got hit somewhat sadly by the GFC, and was basically taken to the cleaners by the bank, and was, shall we say, one of the highest profile cases where the CBA and therefore Bank West were being criticised. So I got so excited when I got phoned up about this and thought, this was it, I've made it. I'm going to fly down to Melbourne and appear in front of a former High Court judge, and basically stand next to Michael Hodge, who's the sort of the counsel assisting, and a bunch of other people. Anyway, so that was very exciting. My wife was very proud. She thought this was awesome. My kids thought it was amazing. They had no idea what it was, but I kept saying how good it was. And anyway, so I get down to Melbourne the night before. I meet counsel assisting, and counsel assisting is a sort of an up and coming young Victorian barrister who's saying, now, what we need you to do in the morning is, when your client gets in the stand, just basically ask him where he's from, ask him what his address is, and ask if he swears to tell the truth. And I thought, really? That's it? I said, but I'm sort of, you know, meant to be cross-examining the CBA head of credit. Well, no, mate, that's my job. Right. So I've written submissions at great cost to my client, and all I'm going to do is swear this bloke in, and that's it. So anyway, so I, of course, because my role was so limited, thought I should, you know, pull that off reasonably well. And anyway, I got stage fright in front of former Justice Hayne, and the simplest job of a barrister, which is to swear in a witness, almost went horribly wrong. And then I flew home, and didn't quite have the courage to explain to my wife that the night away, the trip to Melbourne, the experience in front of Kenneth Hayne was all about swearing in a witness. Anyway, I ended up on TV, which was completely absurd. And Liz, my wife, posted on Facebook this still image of me leaning over the lectern as if I was sort of pronouncing something remarkable, and said, isn't he doing well, to all of our friends? And even last night, when I was explaining to my son what I was going to be doing today, I still couldn't say that I was going to be talking about this, because I basically would be admitting that I was a fraud. So there you go.
That's a good story.
Now, there are highs and lows at the bar, yeah.
The highs and lows of the bar, we've all had those. And speaking of lows, we've got a question in saying, in contrast to the earlier question, have any of you had situations where you had to manage a difficult relationship with a superior in your team or colleague? Steve. Yeah, I mean, we've all had situations like that. You'll find difficult personalities wherever you are. I mean, I think the way that I sort of handled it was just to, it is very difficult. I just sort of did the best that I could and, you know, worked my way through everything in a manner. I mean, luckily I had other people around me who were very supportive, a really good team, and it wasn't, you know, it was only sort of one person. It's a bit difficult when you've got, when you're in a smaller firm and you're having to deal with a difficult person who's, you know, maybe the only boss that you've got or the only partner in charge.
But don't be afraid, like if you're feeling like you're bullied at a firm or whatever, to speak up. It's not, you know, again, kind of what people were saying, like really, do you like this area? Is it something that you see yourself in? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
If you're working for this ogre or someone who's siloed, or, you know, someone that's not treating you with respect, you just, you know, speak up.
Yeah, you always have to speak up, and then that way, you know, because if you don't say anything, these sorts of things just get swept under the rug. I think and
you allow them to continue that behaviour,
exactly.
Whereas they are actually, you know, sort of disciplined for that type of behaviour, or it has consequences as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
so, and then I've only learned that as now being a partner, because you get to see, you know, the sort of more senior people that are wanting to get to the next level, and you're sort of saying, well, hang on.
Yeah.
So good question, I suppose.
I think that there is a degree. There's also a degree, and this is just one. We do have to be resilient in this profession. It's a tough profession. Like, it's a fantastic profession, but I think anyone at university now thinking it's easy, and anyone in the first 1 or 2 years thinking it's easy, it's just not. I mean, it's tough, and the longer you do it, the tougher it can become sometimes, because the expectations are higher. It gets harder every day to do the same thing you've been doing for 20 years or 15 years or 30. So I think, you know, there's a little bit of a mood around the city, I think, in the world, I guess, where it's easy to sort of just think it's all somebody else's fault as well. And this is not specifically, nothing to do with bullying, because that is totally unacceptable. But in front of a judge, for example, even a magistrate, and magistrates have very difficult jobs. They can be short in the way they look at you. They can be completely lacking in compassion for you personally. And that can just be as upsetting as another person appearing not to like you on that particular day. So bullying is totally unacceptable, and I absolutely endorse that. But I would also encourage everybody to think you've got to be resilient. And if you don't want to be, and you don't want to have to continually think about how you're being and adjust your own behavior a little bit to make yourself more happy, then, you know, it may end up being a disappointing choice. But I think, you know, as you get more and more senior as a solicitor, I'm sure, and as you get more and more senior as a barrister, you have to make decisions, and you have to have self-confidence, and that self-confidence and judgment comes from just working every day at making sure that you are resilient and you know, focused on what matters, and not drifting into the background and letting yourself become overwhelmed by ideas or other people's thoughts. And now, it's easy as a person for that to happen from time to time. So it's not about sort of thinking there's something wrong with you if it happens. It's just, when it happens, recognize it's happened, go away for a day or two, think about it, talk to a parent or a sibling or a friend, but just come back and brush yourself off and have another go. And that, over a period of time, pays enormous dividends and is enormously rewarding. So,
yeah, I agree with that. And what I found as well, you know, when I went through a period of that stage in my life where, you know, I felt like I was getting quite bullied in the workplace that I was, it really makes you reassess whether or not you want to be in this industry. And for a very long period of time there, I thought about, you know, doing something else. But I had spent so much time studying, getting the skills. I mean, I've done, I think, pretty much every single job that there is to do in a law firm. I've always worked in law firms. And then I just made a decision to move. And that was the best thing that I've ever done, because then I went into a workplace where I didn't have, you know, I didn't have any of those negative experiences. It was all really positive. had a fantastic mentor, and ever since then I've just been able to excel and get to where I have been. So I think now the issue of bullying and is very open. Lots of people are talking about it. There's lots of programs in place to deal with it, particularly in relation to sexual harassment, and putting in place these bystander programs so people feel confident to speak out about it, speak out against it. And so I think it's you do have to be resilient, but it's definitely unacceptable, and you shouldn't put up with it, and you need to speak up. And unfortunately a lot of people do have to take themselves out of the situation, and some of them just don't come back to law, which is really unfortunate because we lose a lot of good lawyers.
Yeah, I will say too, from a junior perspective, use your resources. So both at work and outside of work, it's really important to let your mentors know and have open channels of communication if there is a bit of tension there, or if there's workplace politics that are preventing you from doing your job.
So I think when you were saying, where you were talking about your resources as well, this might be a good segue to move into another question that I wanted to ask you, which I think will be quite relevant to a lot of the audience, is that you've worked for lots of different partners.
Yeah.
And dealing with different personalities and different work types, what advice can you give to the young lawyers in relation to that?
Yeah, definitely. So I work primarily with Steph, Steph's team, but I also do, work with a couple of other teams. So I work for the construction disputes partner, I work for a mediation partner, another construction partner that does more of the commercial leasing, and this morning I was working for one of our partners in Dubai. So, it's managing a lot of different personalities, and what I've come to learn from working for so many different teams is that you can't really apply a blanket approach to your work for different partners and different teams. You need to adapt to their working style. So that means adapting to the way that they give instructions, the way you receive and clarify instructions, the tone of voice that particular partner likes to use, in emails and advice, that kind of thing. And really try to understand their working style, because that will make their life easier, in that they won't have to go and redo all the work you've done if it doesn't suit the way that they particularly want it done. And then it'll make your life easier because you won't have that feeling of kind of just trying to keep up. So just really adapt and be flexible in that way. But at the same time, don't let being adaptable compromise your consistency. So I guess this comes back to trying to grow a brand for yourself as a lawyer. If you have strengths and people know you for those strengths, don't let those slip away when you're trying to adapt to someone else's working style. So be consistently quality, if you can.
And talking about working styles, because we're all sharing war stories here today. Maybe you can let us know about your war story in relation to the PPSR.
Oh yeah, so any of our university students that are listening now probably just had their ears prick up at PPSR, because we learn about it in, I think it's ICPL, and it's just, it's the PPSA Act is such a big piece of legislation, and there's a lot going on there. It's very complex. And I was doing work for a new partner with some discharges, PPSR discharges, and anyone who knows about the PPSR interest, the importance of keeping your registrations on the register, for the time that they need to be there, so not discharging early. It's a bit like a mortgage. And I was taking instructions from this new partner, and this partner had a working style that I wasn't used to yet, and I had to clarify my instructions, and we had a really near miss. So long story short is that nobody lost any interest, but it was a very, very close call. And what we had to do after that was talk. So myself and this partner, it's been fantastic, because we've got a really great relationship now, because we spoke about what went wrong, and we developed procedures for ourselves, so that when he gives me instructions, I'm completely 100% clear on what needs to happen as a paper trail. And when I confirm those instructions, he's aware that, I know that I'm going to be doing exactly what he intends me to do. And now that's fantastic. I do work for him all the time now, because I feel like, he knows that I won't do that again. I've already had that near miss, and yeah, I really enjoy working for him. So it's a good workplace relationship.
And Kendra, Kendra's been talking about working for lots of different partners. You've got to sort of
not the same, but a similar story about understanding the importance of who's who in the zoo.
Yeah, it reminds me of this actually. I've kind of blocked it. But we had, the previous firm I used to work for, it was, international firm. They flew us all over the place. They flew us to Melbourne for a Christmas party, and it was a dress-up thing. So everyone, got into it and dressed up as whatever it was meant to be. That was also the first time that we were meeting all the, relevant group heads and, lead partners and that and all the different groups and the different groups nationally. So, but everyone's in dress up. So I was, you've got a few drinks under your belt, you're socialising, you're getting on, just chatting away to Buzz Lightyear for a good, portion of the evening. And then next morning I'm in the office and he pops into my office to say, how, just to continue on the conversation, how's the night and what have you got on today? And I was sort of like, so what do you do? And thought he was an insurance, but no, he was the group head of my group. So what was your name again? And I was like, I couldn't have gone redder if I had tried to put together like I hadn't bothered to look up all the who I should have notably introduced myself to. I wasn't, let's just say I wasn't very strategic that night. I just which I regret. But luckily he forgave me and he had a face mask on all night. So it wasn't like you know what I mean? But it was embarrassing nonetheless to sort of ask who this person was when I, was the group head. So don't do that.
And since you're speaking, one thing that I'm sure all the young lawyers want to know, with all the student debt and the long hours, would you be better off working at McDonald's? When do you get?
Do you want an honest answer? When do I get rich? Well, I'll let you know. I'm listening. If you guys are just at uni or you're coming into a grad role, I mean, you can easily do your research, market data, bandings available online, exactly how many years, PQA, what you get at each, and don't think you're a superstar at any point because your firm will bring you back down to the banding that you're supposed to be at. So, by sort of 28, by 30 again, you'll be making more than most of your friends that aren't, doing some startup or some, they're in funds management or they're in banking or something. But, you'll be fine. But professional services, right? You're supporting businesses. You're not, so you're on the fixed rate model. You don't have these massive windfalls like you would if you're in business. So I'll let you know what I make my millions.
And Giles, we'll wrap up with you because we're nearly out of time, but maybe you can let us know, Kendra's just spoken about us being in professional services. So you were previously in the service buying industry, now you're the service provider. What can you tell us about your experience there and something that you would have known previously before getting into this industry?
Well, it's a good question because I was in funds management and I wasn't practicing law within the funds management business, and Mallisons actually were the service providers to us, and it was remarkable how hard they worked compared to us. The senior associate at Mallisons who did the funds management and corporate work just would absolutely flog herself, whereas we, basically in good funds management territory would sort of be drinking by 6 p.m. This was obviously 10 or 15 years ago when I was much younger, but so I think, I was always aware that service providers do work very hard, and I think they do. I think that there are other ways and sometimes better ways of making money, but it all comes down to what you like doing. My interest at the bar is not so much in the actual intellectual exercise of law, and I'm not actually fascinated. I wouldn't read a book about law as a sort of an occupational way, a way of relaxing. But what I do love about the law, even though it's tough is I love the people and the stories, and that's what it's all about, really. And you can have a really interesting career and a really interesting life just serving people, both solicitor or barrister, it doesn't matter, serving people who have challenges. And I've had a number of people who I feel terribly sorry for. I've had a partner of a major city law firm who's been divorced and ended up in a relationship with another lady, given her access indirectly to his bank accounts, and then basically lost $1 million from that bank account overnight, and that money went to China, and it never came back. So there's one experience. Now, that wasn't something I did for free. I was engaged as counsel for him, and he had solicitors, but I was just obsessed with this case for 2 years. It was amazing. I could not believe that this ex-partner would steal $1 million, and how she did it, and how utterly ridiculous the stories were that she gave for why she did it and where it was. So I just find that sort of stuff fascinating. So even though we may earn less, or we may be more tied to a desk for, you know, the rest of our careers, stories like that, and then incidences recently where I was in a case, and my opponent, who's my neighbour in Chambers, was sort of knocking on my door going, "Oh mate, you've got to settle this." And it's a security for costs application that he was running against my client, and he was, you know, so excited and telling me how my case was hopeless and that I had to basically settle or resolve it because we were going to get security for costs ordered against us. And I said, okay. So I had a chat to my instructing solicitors, and we talked about a solution that might resolve it over a few days. And then the night before, when I realized I was actually going to run this thing because what we were offering, they were not going to accept, I looked at the law of security for costs again. I looked at the fact that the first test is whether the actual application has merit. And so I put that in my opening submission, like this issue is that the actual application has got no merit. And so once I published that before I went to court, my neighbour came around and said, "Mate, you're not running merit, are you? I mean, I thought this was just all about quantum." I said, "Well, you're not settling with me, so I've got no option but to address the elements." And he goes, "Oh, you know," like, and off he went, and off I went down the different ends of the corridor to court. Anyway, so I get to the Supreme Court, it's a duty judge list, and my client, solicitor, comes up to me because I'm standing in the corridor waiting for Justice Pembroke to walk in to the court, and he's literally telling, and sorry, I should say that my opponent is at the bar table. I'm pottering about, slightly nervous, we're all robed, and I'm sort of just doing my own self-control of nerves, and at the same time taking instructions on the run, which is always very difficult because you've got a case in mind, your client's about to give you a different instruction, you've got to recalibrate everything in about 3 seconds and work out what to do. Anyway, so I had this offer. The door goes bang, bang, bang. Justice Pembroke walks in. So I turn around and say, "I'm off," and I run into the court, stand at the bar table. Justice Pembroke walks in. We state our appearances. And basically, Justice Pembroke asked my opponent how on earth he could be standing at the bar table running this application, whether he had anything more to say than that was already said, and absolutely annihilated my opponent. I said nothing apart from, "No, Your Honour, nothing more to say." And it was all over in 5 minutes. He lost, I won. He was virtually in tears and I was cracking up. The entire courtroom was sort of a moment of crisis on both sides, but amusing for one and devastating for the other. And I actually say that because I live for those moments. And my opponent actually was quite a lot younger at the bar. He literally is 2 doors down, and I was speaking to a silk on his floor who told me, you know, in words to the effect of, "I was here, you've just dusted X." And I said, "Well, yeah, but, you know, it was just a coincidence of circumstance." He goes, yeah, don't worry, he deserves it." So that all sort of comes back, and that was all done in a nice, you know, collegiate, jokey way. So I think it's not about where you earn your money, it's about what you want to do. And I love the bar because it's funny, it's hard, but it's got stuff going on every day, and every day is different. And I'm not saying that's better than being a solicitor, because there's the same stuff that goes on in solicitors' offices. I'm just saying, for me, the practice of law, actually having come to it in my mid-40s, is really, really good fun. and very rewarding. But at the same time, I think, you know, it's worth having experiences of life outside of the law. The more you can do to experience life, both good and bad, to form your own sense of things and develop your own sense of judgment of what's right and what's wrong, and when it's right and when it's wrong, the better the lawyer you become, I think. So that's my sort of final view of things.
So we've got one question here, which I might hand over to Kendra, because you've just gone through the recruitment process. The question is, as a mature age student and not having much experience in the law, what can we do to better sell ourselves if we have been studying other degrees and other jobs?
Right, so if you're a mature age student and you're looking obviously to be qualified and get into a law firm, actually your external experience is relevant. And to be honest, when you're doing clerkship interviews or grad interviews or something, you're sitting there and you're seeing 5 to 10 candidates across a week, you know, and they're all telling you what you want to hear. But it's often those ones that, and I'm not talking about, you know, having additional interests like you put that you're into cooking and wine and you watch footy. It's more about like, what other experience have you had? And if you've been in other industries, if you've run your own business, if you've, you know, that's a value add. I see it as.
So yeah, I think that's correct. And just to add to that as well, that if you do have experience in an area where you are looking to go into law in that particular area, like for example, Giles in the property industry, if he were to apply for a job with me, I would find that very valuable, because he is also a source of a new client base, potentially. So it definitely, you know, it definitely does assist if you do have background experience that you can speak to, and possibly even open up some doors for new clients. Yeah,
And you understand the client side in that way, or you, if it's an example Steph gives, or if you've had other, you know, workplace experience, you understand that type of business and risks in that business, and what, you know, what help and stuff your clients would be needing them when you're on the outside as their solicitor. So yeah, I don't see it as a negative. And I think the question was sort of how do they position themselves? Well, you just have to be able to articulate that. You know what I mean? And have the confidence and stuff.
Mostly been studying other degrees and doing some casual jobs.
This is true.
Yeah, good. And yeah, it's just about being able to articulate what you've been doing, having the experience, put it on your CV, and be able to speak to it, because yeah, as Kendra was saying, it's still relevant.
Well, this reply about I've been studying, you know, a number of degrees, I've been doing casual jobs, you know, obviously you're still learning, etc. That's how we found one of our best lawyers that's ever worked, you know, for us, was that she'd come to us after 3 degrees or something like that.
She was working at a cinema.
Yeah, working at a cinema, had no experience, you know, and instantly we formed a bond that she had an understanding of, you know, applying herself, and she was the best junior lawyer that we've sort of trained. So one of the best.
Yeah. All right. Any closing remarks by any panelists?
No, unless anyone else has any other questions.
No? Okay. Giles?
No, all good for me.
Oh, just one more. Oh, thank you for your time. All right, well, everyone, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists as well. Our next Welcome to the Law webinar is only in 3 weeks' time. You can get the information from the Women Lawyers Association website. We'll sign off there. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.